welcome to the hood. Hello, hello, hello. What's up, everyone? I'm Jack Bigadoo, also known as a hood sommelier. If you're here, chances are you like some type of spirit. You like to have fun and you like to be educated. Today, believe it or not, I'm flying. I'm flying about 12 hours ahead. I'm going to Japan. Not because I love anime, but because I actually love whiskey. And if you're here, thank you so much. I already see some of you jumping in from YouTube. You're here, Tim. Thank you for joining. Four Leaf Whiskey, thank you for joining. You know what? If you ever been curious about what's happening in the Japanese whiskey world, this is the place you want to be. We've seen, I truly believe we've seen only two or three brand in the Japanese whiskey kind of dominate the market, but we haven't really seen innovation coming out of Japan in a while. But when I was in London and I heard about this brand and I met the owner of the brand, and how, when I say down to earth, I don't think is even a right word to use. More like below earth. How respectful, how kind this person was. I was like, when are you coming to the US? It's like, oh, we are in the US. And I say, who represents you in the US? And they say, do you know this guy named Whiskey Shifu? And I say, oh, I know Whiskey Shifu. I follow him. And they're like, that's the guy. He's the guy who talked to you about our brand. I say, you know what? Count me in. When I get into the US, I'm going to bring on Whiskey Shifu because I need him to tell me everything about your distillery, about your operation, about what is it that American people should look forward to when it comes to your brand. So I'm talking about none other than Kanosuke Distillery that I'm bringing in. But ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome our guest, the man, the myth, the legend himself. On the educational side, he's known as Mr. Roland, but we know him in the whiskey street as the Whiskey Seafood. Roland, welcome to the show.
Hey, Jack, how are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Thank you so much for jumping in. Thank you for gracing us with a time. You're not even in the US right now. What
No, I'm
time is
not.
it where you are?
It's Saturday morning, 10 o'clock.
10
I'm
o'clock.
in Kagoshima, Japan, which is on the southernmost island of Japan's islands, on a place named Kyushu. But I'm at the distillery today, and I'm sitting in our beautiful tasting room called the Mellow Bar.
The Mellow Bar. You know what? It is on my bucket list. If the way I heard about the place, the pictures I've seen of that area, I'm coming. I need to come visit.
I will welcome you when you come, but I can do you one better. How about I give you a little phone tour of the Mellow Bar?
You know what? Show
Would
us
you like that?
what
All
does that
right.
place
So
look
I'm
like?
gonna pick up my phone. It's gonna rustle a little bit
Yeah,
because I'm not
guys,
an
don't worry.
expert,
We
but
get we get to see the place before we start talking. Yeah,
all
so
right.
show us around.
Okay.
Yeah,
So this is the bar. It's
yeah.
a 50-foot continuous piece of wood.
Wow.
Okay. And you see all of our bottles there and our expressions. I'm gonna get up here, but what I'm gonna do is, and here's all the bottles we're gonna be tasting here in a minute. But you'll see that the blinds are down. I want to do this to make this dramatic. Um, Let me do this for you.
Oh, wow.
So our mellow bar overlooks the ocean, which is the South China Sea.
Wow.
We're on a cliff that overlooks the third longest continuous sand beach in Japan, which just
Whoa.
happens to be the natural egg-laying habitat of the Japanese loggerhead turtle. So a beautiful space. Unfortunately, it's a little bit of an overcast day, but you can only imagine how beautiful it is when it's sunny, but
No,
it's
it
still
is
beautiful now.
beautiful. It is
Yeah.
beautiful. Look at it. I mean, even Tim is saying that's beautiful. It is beautiful. We can't argue with that. That is beauty right there.
Yeah, but
It
it's a
is
beautiful
beautiful.
room. So I like to come up here sometimes with my computer and I turn on some records. I may or may not have a dram in my hand, and we
Weird.
enjoy
It'd be
this
weird if you
wonderful
didn't
view.
have a drum, my friend.
And sorry for the barrels. We typically don't have barrels in the tasting room, but
No, it's a
we're
good
getting
thing.
ready.
It's good to see.
Yeah,
It's good to see it.
we're getting ready for what's called a distillery day, which is tomorrow. That's kind of why I'm here. We're in celebration of our seventh anniversary. So we were established in mid-November, 2017, and
Yes,
so every November we do a distillery festival, which celebrates our beginning. And you can kind of see the tents being built up out there, and the folks working out at the pizza oven. But yeah, this is where we are. So I will leave the lights up.
I'm. You know what, Roland? I can be. I don't think I can express the level of excitement I have about what's happening here. For me, it's like you are literally are you're bringing this thing to life. I'm like now I want a vacation there. There's nothing else to be said. I want a vacation there.
Like you
It's
said,
just so beautiful.
when you come, I'll be waiting here for you.
I it's those are like views that I say you can't buy it at Walmart.
No,
It's not a
no,
catalog. You got to live it. You got to see
absolutely,
it.
absolutely.
So
So we'll
so
talk a little bit later about our whiskey, and but you see that the terroir that we make whiskey in,
yeah,
our whiskey is influenced by where we are. We'll discuss that later.
absolutely, absolutely. But before we discuss even the
Sure.
distillery, people, if you don't know the man, is at Whiskey Seafood, which I know what seafood is because obviously I watch a lot of anime. But for the people that don't know Roland, because you also have an interesting story. From my research and background work, I
Yeah.
was even told that this is not what you wanted to do. This is not something you even wanted to be part of. So tell us a little bit about you, who you are,
Sure.
your background, and how you ended up in this position as
Sure.
their GM.
Sure. So let me start with your first question. You're right. Seafood's not a normal name for anybody. Obviously, everybody knows what whiskey is, and I tell people I spell it correctly with no e. But sifu it means master in Chinese. It's same as sensei in Japan, master or teacher.
Mhm.
And I grew up in the '80s watching, on Saturday afternoons, the Shaw Brothers kung fu movies, right? And it's always sifu, 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 sifu,
Yeah.
sifu, master, teach me something, or my students, this is my last wish is that you take over for me, blah blah blah. And I
Mhm,
just
mhm.
I that image of teaching and camaraderie and partnership always stuck in my head. So when I started this account and started learning a lot about whiskey, I felt like it's my duty to teach and what I learned, right? And the titles just kind of stuck with me. But I'm a whiskey geek. In Japan, we would call it otaku. So
Okay.
otaku is like beyond geekiness. It's like your
Mhm.
your life's obsession, right? And so you're right. I was not always a whiskey professional or spirits professional. In fact, I worked 25 years in consumer products and high tech. My last company was a small company called Hewlett Packard, and
Those
I
are
woke
those
up.
are small,
Yeah,
tiny
small,
companies.
small. So I was in the telecom business,
Yeah.
but I actually woke up last year, and I think we all get to the point in our lives, and we realize that there's probably more to life and we should follow our passion. So I did. I left high tech and I said I'm gonna make it on my own, doing what I love, which is whiskey. And I'm not a newcomer to whiskey. In fact, I was running the largest whiskey and spirits group on the West Coast called San Francisco Whiskey Society. We had founded a whiskey festival called Fog City Social, where several of us decided that the whiskey festival model in the U.S. is broken, where it's all run now by marketing companies and it's expensive and it's really focused on who can have the oldest expression or the most allocated product, which you and I both know, or I mean, I'm sure many of your viewers know that those are great whiskeys, but they may not always be the best. The best whiskeys are the most value for money whiskeys.
True.
So we set aside a mission of changing that, and we've been running for 4 years now. We're probably the hottest show on the West Coast, and I invite you to come out next April as my guest to San Francisco,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
and love to have you there. So kind of that background passion, that hobby that I had in whiskey, really turned into something that I wanted to do full time. And I have been traveling to Japan both for work and fun for many years. And I met Kamasa-san in 2018 at a whiskey festival. And I went to back then. You go to whiskey festivals and you expect to see the larger players, the Centauri's, Nikas, and they just weren't present in a way where I could engage with them. And at that time, that was about a yearish or around time when some of the newest distillers were coming on board. I had a chance to taste some of our product from Kanosuke. I say our product now, but back then it wasn't my product. I tasted it and I said, "This is amazing."
Mhm.
And I immediately met Kamasa-san, who I heard in your introduction when you talked about him. I don't think words can describe how wonderful of a man this is and how visionary this man is. But when I said this liquid is incredible, can I buy some? And he said, absolutely not. What he meant was he wouldn't allow me to buy an owner's cask because I didn't live in the US. But anyways, we've just got to know each other over the years as I've come back to festivals, and I've always found the liquid to be phenomenal. So when the opportunity for this came up, where he was looking for somebody to help him represent the region, and I was available because I basically quit my job. This was just a perfect match. So I say dream job for me. I don't know if it's dream hire for him, but dream job for me. And I'm so proud to represent this brand and teach people about, there's a lot of misunderstanding of what's going on in Japanese whiskey today. And what I like to do is I really like to take the time to educate people on what's really happening and let people make their own decisions about what is good and what's not good, what's valuable, what's not valuable, what's real, what's fake. And those words I don't like to use a lot. I just say, make sure that you're educated about what you're buying, because that's the most important thing. Japanese whiskey, at the end of the day, even though there's a lot of distillers coming, and we'll cover that, it's a very small category relative to bourbon and malt whiskey that you get from Scotland in our part of the world. It's very different here in Japan, but in America, it's very different. So, yeah, but that's me. I am I've been on board a bit, building a small but mighty team. And if you haven't heard of us or haven't seen some of the PR we've been doing, you'll be hearing from us very shortly. As
And
we
wait,
really are. Sorry.
you already have an advocate in me, and we haven't even
Thank you
talked
so
about the
much.
juice. The first thing I did, I said, obviously the ownership. There's a lot to be said about ownership. Obviously, the people they're bringing on, all the way to your PR team, everybody there. They were probably the most impressive set that I even seen at the festival. So,
Thank you.
yeah, Annapolis just joined us. Say they want to hear more about this. You are at the right place. You are talking to the right person. If you just joining us, we are in the land of the rising sun, and we are talking about a whiskey that is about to be a game changer in the industry. Now, let's talk about the distillery itself. The
Yep.
distillery is Kanosuke Distillery. But before we start, if we had to start sipping on something while we have a conversation,
Yeah.
where should we start as
I thought you
something
never
we can
asked, Jack.
sip
I
on?
thut you just talked and didn't drink anything.
Oh, no. Trust me, I do a lot of drinking, but I like to know my guests first before I start drinking,
Sure. No, I'm kidding. I'm just giving you a bad time. So we're going to start with our classic single malt whiskey.
which is the
So
48%
you
ABV.
48%. So you can already see how we're different. So, people always ask me, Roland, what's Kanosuke trying to do? Are you trying to be the next Centauri? Are you trying to be the next Nika? And I say, look, everyone has their place. We're not trying to be the next anyone. We are the next generation of craft whiskey from Kagoshimi's Mellow Coast. So we're taking a brand new approach to making whiskey in Japan, where and again, we can cover this. We are going to follow all the traditions and call them laws or rules or standards of whiskey making from Scotland and in Ireland, but we're going to challenge convention a little bit in terms of how we make it. The
First
things
of
that,
all, first of all, you guys already been disrespectful to all your previous your precedent producers because you're starting at where the US or the whiskey lover already want their ABV to be. Right.
yeah,
Because one of the things I usually remind folks is that there is some places in the world where 40% ABV makes sense to them,
yeah,
but not in the US because 40% for us is child play. Let's be honest. The US market have never liked 40%. We want to see something punch above. That's why I think, not to bring anybody out, but whiskey like, Nika from the barrel makes sense to a lot of people to drink because of the level of ABV and the proof. But when you start already at 48, you were starting the conversation at the right place already as your classic. So cheers, my friend. Uh,
cheers, cheers, cheers.
one thing I want to remind everybody is if you've never had a whiskey that made you feel like you woke up in a house when they're baking a fresh apple pie, you want to try this whiskey. The first time I had it, when I nosed it, it took me back to the first time I came to America as an immigrant. On my first ever Thanksgiving I was invited to, I woke up and I had this smell of lemon zest, apple pie cooking into a bake, like being baked. And I never smelled an apple pie before coming from Africa. So that smell is so particular. And when I had this, it took me back to that day. It's like fresh, like it's clean, it's crisp, it's let me stop. I'm getting too excited. Let me, but this is the first thing I would say. But cheers, my friend.
Cheers, cheers.
Mm,
But I
mhm.
completely agree with you, Jack. I mean, a lot of people ask me for tasting notes, and I say, look, it's everyone tastes different, right? So just because you taste apple and I taste apple, or I taste, orchard fruits, doesn't mean that everyone else has to. So when people are drinking, taste what you taste. Your tongue is personal to you.
Mhm.
So don't let people tell you, oh, you're wrong because it tastes like that. You're wrong because you put ice in it, or you're wrong because you put water in it. What tastes good to you tastes good to you. Now, with that said, I do want to comment a little bit on the ABV. We bottle there because our owner, our who's also our CEO and master blender, Kamasa-san, you know, he feels like this is where the whiskey tastes good, right? And I asked him why wasn't it 47% or 49% or 51 or 40? And he's like, because it tastes good here. And I really appreciate that because he's making whiskey that he likes, that he wants others to feel like that's his expression of
Correct.
the tone of that whiskey. And it's interesting because I'm sure you like I do drink a lot of core expression whiskey. The funny thing is I don't know how many whiskeys at 40% can drink both watery and hot at the same time. It
You're
baffles me.
preaching, Chief. See who you preaching.
It baffles me. But what it comes down to is balance, and you need to make sure that you balance things. So going for proof just to go for proof doesn't mean anything. Cutting down proof for financial reasons doesn't mean anything. You have to find where that sweet spot is in terms of taste to value to where we think people are going to enjoy this. And we have to project, right? This is Kamasa-san's palate, but he needs to sell to thousands and hopefully millions of people drinking his whiskey. So we need to find a way where it works for everyone.
And let's start with the distillery. So give us a little
Yep.
bit of the story
Sure.
behind the distillery, the
Yeah.
ownership,
So
and
so
how
our
it came
family,
about.
yeah, our family's been making spirits and alcohol. I used to just say spirits, but then someone corrected me at a session, and they're right. But as you know, with whiskey. whiskey geeks. There's always that one person that is trying to stump you. The reason I just said 400 years of spirits is because it's just easier. But the family started making sake 400 years ago. And immediately when I said spirits and sake, somebody immediately said, "Well, sake is not a spirit." Like, you're right,
Hmm.
it's alcohol, right? It's brewed. But we were making it for a temple in Kagoshima. That temple honored the crane. Then about 140 years ago, the family started to commercialize shochu production. And shochu, not to confuse with soju, which is a Korean product. Shochu is the national distilled spirit of Japan. And think about shochu quite simply as well. If you think of soju, the Korean product, it's essentially vodka that is, there's a lot of flavorings added to it, probably supported by a K-pop idol, and it's delicious and it's fun. Shochu is not that spirit. It's a national spirit of Japan, and think of it as distilled sake. The difference is that in shochu you inoculate the product with koji, which is a essentially a rice mold that starts the saccharification process, right? So we don't use that in whiskey because in whiskey, if you did that, it wouldn't be whiskey, right? You have to use malted enzymes to do that, or enzymes from malt. So we were making shochu for 100 since 1857. So 140 years, and then sorry, 1870, 140 years. And about 7 years ago, in 2017, November, we got our license to make Western spirits. And the reason why we did that was because if you look at the history of the Kamasa family, they've been innovating around spirits, right? First sake, then shochu, and now whiskey. And Kamasa-san wanted to take the opportunity to kind of tell the next generation of his family story through the lens of whiskey and what they've learned in distillation by making shochu.
Correct.
So this first spirit, although those are classically a single malt, it's at 40%. There's two things that we do very, 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 very differently. One is that we distill on three teardrop pot stills. So we have three copper pot stills. Most distilleries in Scotland, Ireland, states that are making single malt whiskeys are distilling on two, and namely that in Scotland you have, yeah. So you can see it. You can see those stills in the background there. Namely, in Scotland, they do it on two because you're trying to drive some consistency in flavors, right? They want distillates to come out the same because a large proportion of their distillation maybe or distillate may be sent to other blending houses, right? Like your Johnny Walkers and Dewar's of the world.
Hmm. Hmm.
We're not at that point yet. We are a family-owned business, and Kamasa's theory is like, we're young, we're 7 years old, we have nothing to hide around that, but we don't know what tastes good right now. So we're gonna leverage our stills to make different types of distillate so that we can age them and see what it's gonna look like. So we have a large wash still, and then two smaller spirit stills. One makes a rich type distillate, and the other one makes a light type distillate. And we barrel both of those independently. We have now blended some of them together, and we played a little bit now with triple distilling through all of them, just so we can see, because you won't know for a period of time
A few
what's
years.
going to taste good.
Hmm. Hmm.
Correct.
And
Correct.
for all of
Correct.
you guys, if you're wondering what he's talking about, this is this is in the back, those three tier steel that he's talking about, and the washback that you can see right in the picture here. I wanted just to give you all kind of a little view of what it looks like from
Yep.
there.
Yeah. So that's one thing different. The second thing that we do differently is, remember I mentioned that we started in the shochu business. Well,
Correct.
our second generation founder actually invented barrel aged shochu, and on another time we will get into why that's not a thing and why that's difficult. But the short story
And
is,
for all of you guys who don't know who we're talking about, these are the people we're talking about.
yeah. So on the right is our founder and CEO, and he leads the single malt distillery. And on the left, or on my screen on the left, that's his younger brother. His name is Norihisa. And Norisan owns and leads the Hioki Distillery, which we'll cover in a next expression.
Correct.
But it is a family business. So the family, so the second generation founder, Kamasa-san's grandfather, invented barrel aged shochu, and he really did that to kind of raise the value and perception of what shochu was. I mean, shochu is a great product, but let's face it, it's kind of like sherry and vermouth, right? Where
Mhm.
unless your name, your aunt is 80 years old and named Mildred, she's not drinking a lot of sherry or vermouth. Although we consume a lot of it in whiskey, but
Yeah.
shochu kind of face the same challenge, where it's considered more of an older person's drink. So doing some barrel aging allowed us to really create a new product. And the challenge is that shochu has some regulations around color and clarity, which again we can cover at a later time. And we needed to make sure that we aged things to the point where it did not violate those standards, because he still wanted to sell it as a shochu product versus something else. But as a result, we now have 70 years of barrel aging experience using
Correct.
oak barrels. In fact, that product here this is the product that we made in 1957 called Mellowed Kozoru, which is our
Mm.
barrel rested or barrel aged shochu. So after
You
we
you know you
disgorged
know you
the
know when you're coming back to the U.S., the one thing I want you to bring with you. The
right
the
here,
reason the reason why is because obviously this product is very unique
yeah,
in the finish, right? It's very
yeah,
unique in the finish. And who thinks, right? Who thinks by by proximity makes sense, but who makes whiskey? Obviously Scottish whiskey use ex bourbon cask, sherry cask, and any some wine cask. But Japanese whiskey follow the same rule. They age in ex bourbon
correct,
cask and
correct.
cherry cask. But who comes in and go, you know what? Wait a minute. Let me use my soju barrels that I just dumped soju out of, and that. And I mean, there's a certain specific spiciness, right?
Yep,
That you
correct.
get on this whiskey that you cannot find in any whiskey anywhere in the world. And
Yeah.
this is coming from somebody who walked around a festival of all single malt from everywhere in the world, and I did not taste anything like this.
Well, thank you, thank you. Yeah, I mean, this is again the genius of the Kamasa family, and realizing that when you have these casts, right, they are wood, they're wood casts. They are ex American white oak puncheons. After we disgorge the shochu, we send them off to a cooper here in Japan. They do two parts of the STR method. They shave it. We don't retoast, but we rechar. Okay.
Mm,
And we bring them back to the distillery and we fill them with single malt distillate.
mhm,
So about 40% of the blend in the single malt is extra shochu cast, roughly,
mhm,
roughly. I mean, it'll
mhm.
it'll it'll change slightly, but I think you're right. Again, not to put flavors in people's mouths, but I think it's something that you've never tasted before because no one's ever done it, and this is
Correct.
kind of why we continue to be different and innovative. But I get this. It's something like a cinnamon, maybe like a all spice,
Not
but
like
you're
me
getting
coming
this
from
umami.
Africa. Me coming from Africa, it reminds me of like two spices that my mom like mom, grandma, aunties, right? Star anise, right? First is star anise, and then there is what we call tiger root. These were spices, but actually in and ginger. Those three
Yep.
things, when mom or your auntie your season, you know, your season your food or your meat with those seasoning, you know it's about to go down. It is just it's and but those spices are so particular in how they taste that I mean they make you feel great. And the finish on this whiskey is just that spice. So it's not those things are not meant to be spicy hot, but it's supposed to give you flavor
That's right.
that to the point where you have to actually go in. So the question actually came through because I had the same question: is have you explored Korean soju? not soju barrels.
Yeah, no, we haven't. We're focused on on shochu at the point at this point. I actually don't know a lot of Korean soju. I don't think any of it's aged at
And
all.
barrel age, yeah.
Yeah. So this is special. So there's no one there's no one doing this today that I know of that's saying it publicly like we are. But I
Yeah.
think what it adds is this depth of flavor. It
Mhm,
gives us this umami, like maybe a bit of leather in there. But
mhm.
to me, the most important thing is it gives you this richness, this viscosity. It's not oily, but it's dense, it's thick, it's lovely. And the mouthfeel on it for, again, a flagship core expression that we're pricing extremely well. I think it's a phenomenal flagship whiskey.
So now let's talk about all the expressions that you have.
Sure.
Now let's talk about the one on the US market and
Yep.
the one outside of the US market.
Yep. Yep. So we have three core expressions. We just tasted the single malt. The second core expression we have is here, which you can kind of see. It's called a
Yeah.
Hioki pot still.
Hmm.
I will cover this in a second. This one was bottled at 51%. So you
51%
notice things are
ABV. As you
going
can see,
higher.
as y'all are hearing this thing, this literally has every single one of these expression has body,
Yeah.
has proof, has I'm so excited about every one of these expressions.
Yeah. And the third one is our double distillery, which again I'll cover in a minute when we start tasting it.
Yeah,
But this one is
the
at 53%.
correct. So this was the pot still. No, this is the one. This is the one you
Yep.
just showed.
Yep.
Yeah,
That
that was
is
the
our
pot
pot still
still.
whiskey.
Yeah.
Correct. So you wanna move on to trying that one?
Yeah, let's try the
All right.
pastille. If y'all, if and that one will be the pastille will be coming on the U.S. market, right?
All three are now available in the U.S. market. So
Okay,
the flagship single malt, the Hioki pot still, and our double distillery are now available in the U.S. market. And if your
okay.
favorite retailer doesn't have it, go ask them.
Yeah, go start harassing your favorite retailer.
Please, please.
Tell
Tell them
them
if not, Jack and Roland are going to come talk to you.
yes, yes, we're gonna come and talk to them if they need to. We'll ask them why they don't want to carry it, and they'll have to explain it to us. But when I'm
Perfect.
looking when I'm looking at this, let's talk about a question was asked previously by Tim, which actually bring us to it. It's like, hey, I don't know the rule about coloring or adding coloring into Japanese whiskey. Can you talk more about that, or how are you guys proceeding about that?
Yeah, sure. So, first of all, as you know, in Japan, there are actually no rules for Japanese whiskey. But in 2021, the Japanese Spirits and Liquors Manufacturers Association, which is a trade body, which Kamasa-san sits on the board for, as along with Ichiro-san from Chichibu and the team from Centauri and Nika. They got together and said, what you're seeing coming to the United States or what we're shipping out of Japan is not representative of what real Japanese whiskey is, or authentic Japanese whiskey. So even though there's no official laws for it, um, they wrote standards in which are self-regulating.
Correct.
So all of the manufacturers signed in to help deliver what they call a set of standards around Japanese whiskey. And essentially, I'll summarize them that the only thing that really can come from outside of Japan to be called Japanese whiskey, authentic Japanese whiskey, is the grains, because we don't have a history here of growing all the grains, but everything else, including the conception of the product, the creation of the product, including distillation, maturation, um, and the barreling of the product must be done in Japan using Japanese water.
Hmm.
So it's not to say that you cannot source product coming in, but you can't call that Japanese whiskey. You'd have to call it blended whiskey or foreign, something that doesn't indicate that it's authentically made in those standards that were defined.
Correct.
And it's not, again, really, it's not about the law per se, it's about transparency and
Correct.
telling people what they're getting in the bottle that they get. So the question about color is we allow it to be added, but we do not add it ourselves.
Okay. Okay. So that was the
Yeah.
answer. You
Yeah.
guys heard it here first.
Yeah, we
They,
don't add
they
it, and also we don't chill filter.
no chill
Right.
filtration,
Right.
and they don't add any coloring.
Right.
Clearly, what's the average age that goes into this blend
Yeah, this
here?
one again. Remember, we have nothing to hide. We've been in operation, so as of a week from now, we'll be in operation for a total of 7 years. Right? It takes 3 years to mature a whiskey. So this whiskey itself is probably in the neighborhood of 3 to 4 years
Hmm.
when we bottled it.
Okay, 3 to 4 years.
Yeah,
I'm telling you now, it does not taste like a 3 to 4 year whiskey at
yeah,
all.
yeah. We just take a different approach. A lot of companies may, again, I'm using scary words like hide, but they may use those words to say I can't tell you because it's a secret, or
Hmm.
it's something we don't want to share. We have absolutely nothing to hide about our whiskey. We've been in
Hmm.
operation for 7 years. We'll tell you where the grains come from. We'll show you our manufacturing. um, you're allowed to take pictures when you come here. The only place where we don't let you is the mill house, because it's dangerous,
Yeah,
and we don't want anybody to get distracted when they're doing it. So there's nothing that we won't share about what we're doing. And if I can't tell you, I'll go find out and tell you. And if it is that we can't tell you, I'll tell you that we can't tell you. Right. So
yeah.
it's really about that transparency that we hope more manufacturers do, because I think that will help people truly understand the products that they're buying.
Hmm.
But this whiskey, it's actually a very, 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 very funny story. It's our most technical whiskey, right? It is a Irish inspired Japanese pot still whiskey. Okay.
I
Yep.
haven't had this one. This is new. I have not had this one.
you may have, but you probably drank more than one or two expressions when you were in London. So I'm sure you had it, but you may not remember.
Yeah. What
Anyways,
what is going on here?
right. So
Tell me more about this.
sure. So Irish inspired mash, not totally an Irish inspired. So we use 10% malted barley. Okay, 90% unmalted barley.
So
That unmalted
definitely
barley,
Irish style. Yeah.
correct, Irish styles. That 90% unmalted barley comes locally from Japan. In fact, it's the same barley that we use for making our barley shochu. Okay.
Mm.
So it is 90% a very, very local grain product. Now, the difference is when you get product for shochu, when you get barley, we actually get the barley without the husk, right? So that hard shell on the barley doesn't exist, right? Which for us now, it's allows us to do some very interesting things. So we don't do a traditional mash cook, right?
Hmm.
What we do is we take that barley and we steam it
Mm.
like you would be making sake or
Hmm.
shochu, right? After you steam it, those grains have softened because they obviously don't have a shell on it, right? In sake making or shochu making, you would immediately inoculate it with koji, and we don't do that, because if we did that, it would be considered shochu, not whiskey. So without the koji, we put it into a fermentation tank directly with water and yeast, and that's it. And we do a slow ferment on that. Okay, which after we're done fermenting, and tell me if I'm getting too boring or too
No, no, no,
technical.
no, no, no. I'm
We
making sure
take it.
people on Instagram know that we're live.
Good, good. Um, After we're done fermenting, we take that entire wash, right, and we or mash and dump it straight into um, a stainless steel vacuum still that we use for making shochu, and we do it on the grain. So we don't
You guys are
filter.
being very, very
Yeah.
technical. Was it was
So
it was it was it by design, or was it more
this
like
is
this is what I think I want to do?
A little bit of both, right? So Kamasa-san was wanting to make a grain whiskey. He had spent a lot of time in Scotland and actually spent a lot of time in Kentucky, and he really likes bourbon. So he kind of gave him himself and his team a little bit of an Apollo 13 challenge and said,
Mm-hmm.
"Can you make something, or can we make something that's kind of like bourbon, even though we can't make bourbon here? But here's your challenge: no corn and no column stills." So then they wanted to see if we could leverage some of the distillation techniques that we've learned over 140 years of making shochu. So we used the shochu still, which is a stainless steel teardrop still
Mm-hmm.
that we operate under vacuum pressure so that we can extract different flavors from that barley. So the way I like to explain it to consumers is like, think about when you have a steak, right? You can grill that steak, so high temperature, which is kind of your normal distillation, or you can sous vide the steak, right? Low and slow. So think of us as sous videing the wash. We're putting the entire wash under vacuum pressure and slowly distilling over a longer period of time, and that extracts different flavors from the barley. So after we have distilled it, we put it into two types of barrels. We put it into ex-bourbon barrels
Mm-hmm.
and new American white oak puncheons, the same puncheons that we use for our shochu business. We age them separately, then we blend them back together, and
Wow.
this is the result. So, to me, on the nose of this, the first time I nosed this, it just brought me back to when I was a kid, and I'd go to my grandmother's house, or you go to the grocery store, and you grab those um, like yellow cellophane wrapped bulk
Mm-hmm.
candies that smell like
Mm-hmm.
butterscotch, and it just immediately gave me that impression like, could this be bourbon?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not. There's no corn in here at all. It is 100% barley. But Kamasa-san's view is, if you spend the time, the effort, and use quality ingredients, and spend the time blending, you can create magical products even at a very, very young age, right? Because if I told
This
anybody you have a 3-year-old grain, they would
I wouldn't
freak
believe
out.
you. I would not believe you. I would not believe like the craziest thing is I'm actually scared for the market because this is a young whiskey. This is I it's like somebody seeing you when you started your career. And if this is what you're delivering, what happened when you become middle management or you become the boss self? Like
Mm,
that is actually quite scary. But again, there's a saying in French: there's no great house built without a great foundation. And it seemed
true.
like the foundation of this house is built strongly. Ser- I think Kanosuke is reminding me of is my head when I think of it is the same is comparable to the story of of Brookline. It's keeping unique, making sure you create good product, and even if at 5 years, Octomore became the best thing on the planet, but it's the youngest whiskey out there,
Sure.
and no one want to believe it. And I have the same feeling, like your master distiller, master blender are producing such great product
Yeah.
that every year that this product is growing, I'm afraid that I think Roland, your job is just gonna become easier and easier and easier. You know,
Yeah.
like you,
I hope so.
it's just gonna be amazing. I love that there is that incorporation of other style of making whiskey. There's
Yeah.
not that one straight way
Yeah,
of
and this really
making.
gets back to the to kind of how I started this conversation, right? Was around, there's tradition to be followed, but doesn't mean you can't challenge convention. Um, and you kind of add this interesting microclimate that we're in. We didn't talk much about that, but I assume you've never been to Japan.
Never been to Japan.
Yeah,
Never been to
but
Japan.
I'm sure you've heard of Tokyo and Osaka
Correct.
and Kyoto, right?
Correct.
Those are like whatever, New York, Chicago, San Francisco,
Correct.
LA, right?
Correct.
These this is where a majority of the population lives, and that's on our main island called Honshu.
Hmm.
We're not from there.
Hmm.
go left and south, right? So we're in the southwest, the most southerly and westward island called Kyushu.
Mhm.
Kyushu happens to be, um, w- it's a very interesting place. So if you take my same analogy of New York and Chicago for Tokyo and Kyoto, um, Kyushu and Kagoshima, if it were a state, I would say it's probably someone like Alabama, where
Oh
we're
yeah,
we're 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 in the deep south.
deep south. Yeah.
But what I like about Alabama, people think I'm making fun of Alabama. I'm really not. You think about Alabama, what you see is there's a pride in place, there's a pride in work. It's also where a lot of the great agricultural products usually come from is the South. And it's the same thing here in Kyushu, where we have great barley, we have great rice, we have great sweet potatoes, which allows us to have the shochu culture we have here. But
Right.
also, we have excellent beef. We have cured pork that comes in here, and
Now,
you can even eat.
I really have to
You
visit.
have
I'm
to come. In
hungry
fact,
now.
last night I was going to say I even had chicken sashimi.
Wow.
You can't have that in many places in the world, but you can have it here. So this kind of like lush environment, along with this craftiness and intention of how people work here, helps us create this beautiful product. And that's not to mention the microclimate. So we're on this beach that overlooks the beautiful sea that you saw earlier, and I'll show it again before we leave. But across the island from us is a still active volcano that probably erupts, once a weekish. In fact, it erupted about 3 hours after I left last time, just to get rid of me. But you have these microclimates where in the summer, we can be 100 degrees and 90% humidity. And in the winter, you have snow and it's freezing, and very, very windy, which with our warehouses being right on the cliff, you create a lot of liquid exchange, equating in a lot of flavor.
Wow. So maturation wise, I mean,
Yeah.
it's seen the same. So if you don't mind me asking, have you
Sure.
guys measured
Yeah.
angel share loss yet?
Yeah. We think it's somewhere around 6 to 8% on a
Okay,
yearly basis.
on a yearly basis.
Yeah,
Still not bad. Still not bad.
not bad, not bad. I would say that we believe, and we're being pretty conservative, that when we taste our whiskey compared to other comparable age statements, that we probably get 1.5 to 2 times more age than other aging environments would get. But some people said this tastes 3, 4 times older. I'm
Correct.
not going to argue with them. Everything's personal,
It does
but
no,
we don't.
it does take taste older
Yeah,
because
we just don't want to go out on a limb and
that climate
say
definitely gives it
this.
an edge.
Yeah.
That
Well,
climate gives it an edge.
frankly, Jack, I think we're more about telling you where we are today, and then we can imagine what the future could taste like. I don't need to tell you it drinks like a 15-year-old whiskey, because it's not a 15-year-old whiskey. It's a three
No,
year old
it's not.
whiskey,
It's not.
and we're not going to hide behind that, because that are the facts, and we need to get away from this obscuring what people really understand about spirits in general.
yeah.
We have an authentic story. We have an authentic product. We come from an authentic place, and we're
And
making
I tell people there's no need for anyone to scare anybody
sure.
into accepting a certain type of whiskey to be
Yeah,
their own, versus actually just embracing what
yeah,
people has to offer. I said, I always give Brookladdick as an example. I said, if somebody can give you a 5-year-old whiskey and you're loving it, chances are age is irrelevant. Quality of grain, quality of making whiskey, quality of actually, and the choices that are made.
correct.
I say there's no such thing as bad whiskeys. There is such thing as bad decisions making whiskey,
Sure,
because every single thing that come through, every decision does matter on the final product.
that's right.
So far, Kanosuke is making all the right decision because the product is amazing. I'm
Well,
gonna
thank you. I
jump
will. I will
to.
make sure I relay that message to Kamasa-san. He will be very.
I,
He'll be very, very happy to hear that.
I'm telling you. I already talked to Sarah. I said, Sarah, if there's a media trip, I want to be on it. If
Okay.
there's, I want to know what is happening there because you guys are breaking the statute quo, and I love brand that come in and just disrupt the market. So in the
Well,
U.S.
thanks.
here, I will be talking about this. We have this. People can come back and watch the recast, but I really advise you right now, if you haven't done yet, the Soke Distillery is on IG. Make sure you follow them. But do me more even of a favor. I'm gonna display this. I need you to go on their website. I need you to actually go read about them because I tell you what, if there is it, I may not know everything about this distillery, but Roland is being modest when he's talking because this family and how they're approaching things uh, when it comes to whiskey is bar none. Is bar none. I do not care. You've seen a lot of distillery, you've seen a lot of things, but when I tell you their approach to people and whiskey is different. The transparency, right? And I met the owner himself. Just we'll talk to you like a regular person. And when I tell you, as a team, they're more of whiskey nerds than anybody I've ever met. We talked about all kind of whiskey before we even get to their own whiskey. And I remember this thing. I remember this moment. He walks in the room and he had the special. We literally the distillery had a special for all a new whiskey coming. When I tell you this man did not go to his own whiskey, not grab his own whiskey, he made it a point to meet every single person that made those other whiskeys to try their whiskey. That is a constant student. Even though he's considered master in what he's doing, he is a student of the art. That tells you already what may come up. He's never too great to learn. So I want you to know that about the type of person. I'm not just excited about this whiskey because of the whiskey, but I'm excited because the people producing the whiskey are actually great people and they are not shy to keep learning. But this is the website. I need you to go there. I need you to click on it. Go visit, go read, go know about this because I need more people to talk about this. I need more people to ask questions about this. Like, what the hell is this whiskey and why should we drink it? That's all. So Roland can work harder than than he's working
or
now.
or you know what? Just in the vein of what Jack's saying, ask me, right? You have my Instagram there. I'm
Yep.
available 24/7. Ask me questions because the more you're educated about what we're doing, you're helping me in the field. You're helping us in the field. What we don't want is people to make assumptions about things. If you don't know, ask. We'll be happy to answer for you if others don't. And what we're striving for is this transparency. Japanese whiskey is still a very, very small category. We want all our producers to be doing well. And I think if the more people understand it and understand the different styles that we're making and the different approaches we have, they're going to appreciate the craftsmanship that we have here at Kanosuke even more.
That is true. That
Yeah.
is very true.
So the final point on this Hioki is like I do a lot of consumer tastings now, right, across the country, and the first thing I ask people is because I don't like to ask them what they like to drink because it's always difficult. So I ask them, what flavors do you like? And even though people they know they're coming to a malt whiskey tasting, they're coming to a Japanese whiskey tasting. 6 out of 10 people will tell me that they like bourbon. And so I said, okay, well, we don't make that, but it's interesting with this Hilki pot still because of how it noses and how it tastes. It's something that I think is very bourbon adjacent. So if you're ever curious about Japanese whiskey, but you really like that B word, um, this is something that I think you will help you cross that chasm a bit and help you really understand. There are differences in, not all Japanese whiskey is light and fruity. Not all
Hmm.
peaty. There are
Hmm.
different styles. We chose to make a different style here with this grain whiskey, but it could be very familiar to you.
Hmm. So I want to talk about the last expression.
Yeah.
We will talk
Yep.
about distribution, obviously. So the last expression, it's your double, right?
Yep. So
Tell
we
us a
call it.
little bit about this last expression.
Sure. Sure. So um, our whiskey business, we make spirits in two different distilleries. Kanosuke, which is run by my boss Kamasa-san, and his younger brother Nori-san runs our grain distillery, which is where we make our shochu, where we make our gin. But we also make our grain whiskey there, Hioki. Both of them were inspired by their grandfather to continue in the spirits business. In fact, their grandfather was legendary in terms of his innovation and his thoughts. And because they were so inspired by their grandfather, they said that when we have liquid of the right age from either distillery, we want to make a premium blend as an homage to our grandfather. So this expression, it is a blended whiskey technically, but it is a love letter from the Kamasa brothers to their grandfather. In fact, most distilleries, right, in Japan, we follow the Scotch tradition where they name the distillery after the place they're from. So
Right,
Yamazaki, for example, Hakushu, Yoichi.
right.
We don't do that. Kanosuke is actually the name of their grandfather. Kamasa was the name of the second generation
Homage
founder of the
to
company.
the grandfather. Yeah.
Yeah, their grandfather that invented barrel aged shochu. In fact, he was so forward thinking that we actually have an image, and unfortunately, because we're setting up for the distiller day, I can't get in anywhere. Um, there's an image, and I think it's on our website of a distillery that has warehouses, it has a hotel, it has a restaurant, it has kind of a kids play area, all in honor of shochu. Kind of reminds you a little bit about what's happening in Napa and Bardstown now, right?
Right.
This was drawn in 1978. So his vision 50 years ago was to do something like this that his grandsons are now taking on the legacy to help finish. So how can you not be proud to work for a family like that that really
Correct.
understands
Correct.
legacy, understands tradition, understands craftsmanship, and they're not taking any shortcuts. So this is again also very weird, right? We're now at 53%. We're putting a blend on the top of our lineup, but
Yep.
we're not hiding behind it. It's a blend that we think is brilliant and honors the legend of their grandfather.
The nose on this whiskey again got me. Whew. I I I don't think people understand the nose. The nose on this whiskey is probably the most is devilishly attracting. That's
Yeah,
it's like being drawn in. If you go back into the Greek god, right? It's like this goddess that draws you in. Uh into it's like the hero's journey is I'm gonna walk around and I'm gonna do this great thing, and you knows this thing, and you go, it's like, oh, I don't like Japanese whiskey, or I only like the B word. But no, you just have this whiskey, and the nose just draws you in, and you're
it's
like,
it's
I
it's
already
beautiful.
failed, my mission already as the hero, because the nose on this is just mesmerizing.
Yeah. Well, what's nice about our whole lineup is that you have a single malt, you have a grain single pot still whiskey, and then you have blended
Single pot,
whiskey.
yeah.
So we have with
Yeah.
things for everyone. Um, Three very tightly priced, affordably priced, I think, for
Hmm.
the quality of the ingredients that we're putting in, the care that we're putting in, and it gives you three completely different experiences. Because we all drink a lot of whiskey. You don't drink the same thing every day. I don't drink the same thing every day. You sometimes you feel like this, another day you feel like that, and to
Hmm.
have this kind of diversity in our core lineup, it's really really special.
So, I mean, uh, this expression obviously solid expression, what I expected, and the proof with the proof it gets better for me.
Yep.
A little bit of that licorice at the end that you get on with that proof, much more solid. Like now, I want to make myself a highball with this one. I want to enjoy a nice highball. Hell,
Go for it.
I want to have a penicillin. I don't know. Like I want it in the cocktail now. Like I can think of all the flavors that can actually just rise with this one.
If you want a penicillin, use this one, the 2023
Oh,
limited edition.
2023. So
It's
somebody
brilliant.
asked before and previously, they were asking, are you guys working on any experiment or any special release?
Yep. Yep.
So
We are.
that was the question from Annapolis. So I want to make sure we come to that. So tell us a little bit about now. If you went on a website, if you were here and you cheated and went on the website, you know all the things that are coming up. But
Yeah. Yeah.
I will let Roland tell us
Well, sure. So every year, actually, prior to us releasing the core portfolio, we actually had to learn how to make whiskey.
Mhm.
Not learn how to make whiskey, but understand where we are with our whiskey program, right? So distillate takes time. Barrels take time. Blending takes time. So if you were following us, we actually released our first authentic whiskey in 2021, which was a limited edition, but it wasn't really the best name for it, but it was the only name for it because we were trying to figure out subcomponents of
Right.
what we would need to use to blend whiskey. So in
Correct.
2021, we came out with a shochu cask forward, which was our what we call here in Japan our key malt or our most important malt that we base things off of. We came up subsequently with a bourbon forward, a sherry forward, and last year we did this one, which was a peat forward whiskey, only to make using these as the building blocks to ultimately make this product, right?
Nice. Yep.
So it's like puzzle pieces. You have to make subcomponents before you make other components. In fact, if you
Correct.
ever have the chance to take a blending course, and I actually sat in on a session with Zach Taylor from Found North, and he's just brilliant in describing
Oh yeah.
how you it's not about this is what people think about
Mhm.
blending. It's about making components and structures and then wrapping them with other things, and maybe you break something before you make something else. It's like a complicated Lego. And when you understand that philosophy around blending, you'll see why we had to make these subcomponents before we make the actual ones. So we sent these two to the market, obviously without a lot of representation here and explanation of what they were and kind of the ability to talk about the product. They probably weren't as popular as they should have been. But now that we're here with our cores and have been able to talk about our cores, guess what's moving a lot faster? So if you see these,
Mhm.
they're quite limited, especially to 2021. If you see that,
I
just
have
buy
one and I already locked it in my safe.
it. Well, thank you, thank you. You should buy another one so you can drink it, and then lock the other one so you can think about it.
That's the one I've had in London. And when I look for it, they say there is no more, and I say, okay, I'm keeping this one that I
Yeah,
have, and I'm locking in the safe.
yeah. So there's only about 1,700 bottles of this coming to the U.S. roughly. Half of them are gone, and we have another shipment coming in that should be here shortly. So if you see it on the market and you like, this is not very peated. It's peat forward, but it's not all peat. So I'm gonna leave it at that because again, I don't want to tell you tasting notes, but people should try it. It'll change your perception, as you know, around
But
what peated whiskey is.
it will change. It definitely will change your perspective of what you do. So now, as U.S. consumers are concerned, and
Yep.
I know about 20% of people are in Europe that watch the show as well. Uh, what should they look forward to when it comes to Kanosuke Distillery? What should we look forward to as a U.S. consumer coming on to 2025?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
What your brand, your new brand coming on the market.
Yep.
We talked about all your expression. We talked about the ownership. Is there events coming? Is there things that are coming?
Yep.
How is distribution going to look? Because a product can be as great as it can be if we can buy it, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, what's the point of it being
Yeah.
great? So
Sure.
let's talk
Sure.
about first about how. can people find it in the US? Where will it be available? And then what should they look forward to as far as either events or, new expressions coming in? The floor
Yep.
is yours.
Yeah, so I mean, right now we're new, right? We're just at the beginning of this journey to get our product out there. We have a great import partner. We have great distribution partners. But if you go to your usual suspects in major cities and major states, you will find it. So in New York, if you go to Astor Wines, you'll find it. In California, we're at K&L. In Chicago,
Okay.
we're in at Binny's.
With Benny's, yeah.
Yeah, so we're
The
we're in
usual
at
suspect.
we're in at where we would expect them to be. You know, we haven't crossed the chasm of the national change yet,
Mhm.
but we'll be doing that over the next year or so. But really go out and support your local independent stores. We're also available in some of the best bars in the U.S. Some of the best restaurants. So almost all of the Michelin Japanese restaurants in New York. We're at Shinji's Bar. We're at Martini's Bar. We're at Angel's Envy. You know, so we're at all the right places. We're at Wolf and Crane. We're at Seven Grand in California. So we're all at the right places. And my favorite, my newest favorite friend that I was in Chicago last weekend. Delilah's really loves her stuff. So
Oh
Mike,
yeah,
Mike,
Delilah knows
yeah,
good single malt whiskey. So
yeah,
yes,
Mike and I had a great conversation with Julia from Bar Kumiko. In fact, Julia's going to be here tomorrow. I'm going to host her. So, you know,
nice.
we're making the right inroads to the right places. And if there's places that don't have them that you want them, go talk to your local retailer, your local distributor. We'll make sure you get it.
And that's the only way you support a brand. I will tell you guys right now. Support a brand. To support a brand, all you have to do is literally go to your retailer and ask them who's a distributor. And if there's no distributor in that state at all, that's the opportunity for the brand to go, hey, there is a demand here.
That's right.
Now we should go. Because the one thing people don't understand is brands don't necessarily know where the product are needed till the consumer of that state start asking for it. Then all of a sudden it become a need for them to make sure they're there. I remember one time there was this brand that just did the coast, and coming to find out, people in Minneapolis love their whiskey.
Yeah.
And we literally, from me in Nebraska, them in Minneapolis, we literally started a whole petition. And they said we couldn't come to Nebraska, but we can do Minneapolis because it was below Chicago. Like, we asked for it, and it became one of their biggest places to sell. But they never
Awesome.
thought about it because,
Yeah.
yeah, the coast was the only place that they want
Yeah.
to. So let's, you want to support a brand, start nagging
Yeah.
your local retailer, your Japanese, especially your Japanese. It's weird for you to go to a place that actually serve that Japanese food, and they don't have your favorite Japanese whiskey. So this
Right.
is your opportunity to hold them accountable and say, hey, I'm here and I patronize you and love your food. Your bar look great, but it's missing my bottle. This is your opportunity to decide. The least they can do is have that bottle there for you for either any cocktail or any neat pour that you like. So Roland,
Agree.
thank you for being here. Thank you for letting
Oh, you're
us
welcome.
know a little bit about this. This giving us a little bit. I'm hoping and praying that I get the opportunity to myself to come create content at the distillery and tell the story from my point of view. But if there's any last thing you want the average consumer to know, what would it be?
You know, I always tell people, try everything, right? Just because you haven't heard about it doesn't mean that you won't like it. Or even if Jack says it's good or not good, doesn't mean that you'll like it or not like it. So not all Japanese whiskeys made in how you thought it was made. We're very different, right? From the thought process around our conception, from the inspiration of the family to the craft techniques that we're using. Give us a shot because I think you'll be pleasantly surprised at the level of quality and craftsmanship that you're going to find in our bottles for the price point that we're putting it out at. That are You're going to feel like you're the ones that discovered that. And I think when you look back in a few years, that discovery is quite important, right? We as whiskey fans want to be the one that is the tastemaker. It's like, I told you about that X years ago. I
I
tried that
knew
first.
about this before it was
Right,
cool.
right. So don't worry about that. Just try, because I think you'll like it. And secondly, ask questions, right? If people aren't being transparent with you, there's something amiss, right? We want everyone to understand what they're drinking, what they're getting is authentic,
Mhm.
and because of that, we're going to be transparent.
So, guys, ladies, gents, his name is Roland, but he's known as the Whiskey Seafood. This was us visiting the land of the rising sun, a beautiful little paradise where amazing whiskey is being made. I always say I love to be the first to introduce you all to something amazing, the first to actually batch all the propaganda around certain level of whiskey and really bring it to education, story, and knowing the people. You need to know what your dollar is supporting. So next time you're going in, just know who you support. Supporting a great family, supporting great people that are just trying to bring great Japanese history to y'all through a glass. Roland, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you
Cheers.
here. Cheers. And for all of you guys watching, thanks for hanging out with us. And we'll see you next time.